Now we'll move to our next speaker, who is Brent Kynoch. Brent?
Good afternoon, all. My name is Brent Kynoch. I'm the Managing Director of the Environmental Information Association, and our organization is a group of professionals who are involved in the identification and remediation of environmental hazards from buildings and facilities and homes throughout the United States. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Flores for his excellent presentation. To have a surgeon talking about prevention is a beautiful thing. I had the great pleasure of speaking with Dr. Wolf last night about the work that she does. And for those of us that are involved in trying to identify and remediate asbestos, it's a great reminder when we talk to a surgeon about the real consequences that you see every day in your work. So thank you for your involvement with ADAO. Thank you for being a part of prevention, because I think we all know what that's about. I'm here to talk a little bit more about legacy asbestos and what it is. So let me share with you first, the title of my presentation is that the top 10 things you should know about legacy asbestos. Number one, what you should know, legacy asbestos is everywhere. And I have a lot of pictures there, some examples. You see pipe insulation, you see floor tile, you see sprayed on fireproofing, you see zonalite insulation, and you see drywall joint compound. Yes, indeed, we have a problem in our nation's buildings, and it's called legacy asbestos. Number two thing you should know about legacy asbestos is it can result in exposure. Of course it can. If it's everywhere, and we're walking by it, on it, under it, over it every day, there's going to be exposure. And I have a picture of a firefighter there. We talked a little earlier about the International Association of Firefighters. And imagine the firefighter who needs to rush into a building to put out a fire and save persons trapped in that building. They don't think about what they might be exposed to as they enter that building. And yes, legacy asbestos results in exposure. Number three thing you should know about legacy asbestos. More than 40,000 Americans, not around the world, 40,000 Americans die every year from exposure to legacy asbestos. This is a very real problem. Number four on our list of top 10, there is no requirement to label legacy asbestos. Now, some of you may be surprised by that. In our nation's schools, we have a regulation called AHERA, the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, and it does require labeling of asbestos. But once we get outside of schools that are kindergarten through 12, there is no requirement. So let's go back to the exposure potential. You have persons working in and around legacy asbestos that currently exists in our nation's buildings today, and they, in some cases, have no idea that they are working beside, around, cutting through, ripping out asbestos-containing material. And that is a problem. Number five, maybe this won't surprise you, EPA has no idea how much asbestos exists in our country. Now, EPA back in the mid-1980s came out with a study, and they said there were some 735,000 buildings with friable asbestos throughout our country. But I remind you of that adjective there, friable. They didn't talk about materials that are non-friable that may eventually become friable. So EPA really has no idea how large our problem is, and I think we can all agree and understand that the legacy asbestos problem is indeed large. Also, EPA has no idea how much is being added to our national problem. Because we haven't banned asbestos in this country, we continue to add to our legacy asbestos problem. And since there is no requirement for labeling, there's no requirement for importers to say that they have asbestos in a certain material, and since there are a number of materials where asbestos is still legal, we have no idea what's being added to our already severely burdensome problem in this country. Number seven thing you need to know about legacy asbestos. Well, of course, legacy asbestos will continue until we ban asbestos in this country. Until we ban it, The problem just continues to grow every year. But even with the ban, our number 8 thing to know about legacy asbestos, we will be dealing with this asbestos for decades. I would never be one that says that we should have a wholesale requirement for abatement and remediation of asbestos. I have a slide later that talks a little about that. But we will be dealing with this for decades. So I think we should probably do something about making sure the problem doesn't continue to grow. Number 9 thing you should know about legacy asbestos, leave it alone. I've spoken at other ADAO conferences and talked about what a homeowner should do about asbestos, and my words are simple: leave it alone. Let a professional deal with it if it has to be dealt with, but because most asbestos is non-friable and is not releasing fibers into the atmosphere, let's leave it alone and let a professional deal with identification and remediation when that time comes. And last, the number 10 thing I want you to know about legacy asbestos is the Alan Reinstein Ban Asbestos Now Act of 2022 addresses many of these. How and why? Because it places a very solid ban on all forms of asbestos in this country. We have 2 things going on right now in our country. We have a regulatory ban that's possible through EPA, but is moving, in my opinion, entirely too slowly. We also have the opportunity for a legislative ban, and that's what our ban provides us with. And it would indeed work to make sure the legacy problem of asbestos does not continue to grow, and then would lead us down a path of making sure persons potentially exposed to legacy are provided the greatest protection possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brent. That was very good and very concise and very to the point, and leaves us all with 10 important things to think about. Very good. Thank you.